Hi, and welcome to Mommandants Moments. I'm Julie,
And I'm Stephanie.
and we are the better half of the watch.
Here we'll talk about real life, family, and commiserate a little on what it means to be a Coast Guard spouse. Thanks for joining us. What are we talking about today, Julie?
Well, it's that time of year when all the kiddos go back to school.
Ooh, yes it is. Yes it is.
So we could talk about kids and schools and what it is like.
I think that's a great idea. We are fortunate, you and I, that our kids are in private online school, but that's not the case for a lot of us out there.
No. And I think it's a hard thing, and it's a thing that everyone struggles with as far as trying to find the best place to live.
Pardon that noise in the background. It is unavoidable. Carry on.
You have to find the best place to live and go to the best schools,
Right.
but also you have to worry about, are they behind or are they ahead?
Right, because every state the kids move to for schooling has a completely different set of standards.
Yes, there is no set standards nationwide. It's by state
Exactly.
and by city, by counties, and I hear so many times, oh, my kids were so far ahead that they were so bored and they had already done all of this work.
Right.
Or they were behind, which rarely is the case,
Sure.
or they were behind. So I'm really grateful that we have found the online school, private school option,
Yes.
which helps keep it consistent.
Right.
No matter where we go, no matter where we are, it's the same, and it will always be the same.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because when my first kid, Brennan, was going to school, we lived in Virginia, and his birthday is in October. Well, the cutoff for the grade, you had to be 5 before September 29th or something. And then he would have been able to get into kindergarten. But because his birthday was October, he had to wait until he was almost turning 6 to get into kindergarten. Well, he did kindergarten in Virginia, and then our next duty station was 1 year later in New York, but they have a completely different calendar year. They're from January to December. So we got there, and they said, well, Brennan may have just been in kindergarten, but he, age-wise, qualifies to be in second grade. And so he skipped first grade to go to second grade. Now, luckily for him, he was able to make that transition, but how scary, first of all, for him to go from being a kindergartner, like mentally, emotionally, all of that, to being in second grade in a brand new school with a whole bunch of New Yorkers who have been together since, inception.
And probably one of the younger kids in class.
Yes, he was. And that was stressful. And then the first thing the teacher says to me is, his handwriting is like a kindergartner's. And I was like, well, yeah.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah, he just came from there. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had to deal with that. And I think that's one of the reasons that you chose to homeschool for so long, isn't it?
It is. It is one of the reasons is the flexibility, but also the consistency. There's a lot of reasons we chose to homeschool. So, but the flexibility and the consistency were two of the big reasons. It just makes it so much easier. And now with the online school, it's even easier because now no matter where we move in the country, we're covered. We don't have to we don't have to worry about whatever the homeschool standards are for whatever state we're moving to.
Exactly.
Because they differ so much.
Exactly.
Like some are extraordinarily strict. Like you almost have to be a professional, like certified teacher to teach your kids with the amount of things that you have to turn in and like to say, yes, this is all the work that my child has done.
Right.
And all the tracking that you have to do. Whereas there are some places like New Jersey where there's no kind of
there's no standard.
There's no standards. You don't even have to tell them you're homeschooling.
Right.
It could be your kids running around naked in the yard. They don't care.
Yeah. Science. Done.
Yeah. Health.
There's PE. Yeah. Check.
So I can talk a little bit about why we chose to homeschool.
Yeah.
We had decided early on, even before we had kids, that it was homeschooling is something we had wanted to do. It just seemed to fit for us. We have a lot of things that we have issue with as far as public schools.
Sure.
You know, you have teachers who are overworked and underpaid and no fault of their own,
Right.
are given a curriculum that they must adhere to, and they have standards that must be met in order for the school to receive funding, right?
Right.
It comes down to it's more of a business than an actual school.
Sure.
And I feel like sometimes kids get left behind or get put into a label that they don't deserve simply because they may learn different or because they're bored or they simply don't understand something and they don't. And unfortunately, teachers don't always have time to take the time to make sure that every student understands the concepts that they're teaching.
Right, because they're teaching to the middle. They're not teaching to one end or the other.
Right. And, you know, my kids are two very different kids.
Right.
And
yeah, and you have a very unique situation where you have twins and they are very different in their learning style.
Yes, they are very different, which was frustrating for me as their teacher. I could only imagine what it could have been like, you know, being part of a class situation and that for them having that. So, one I have that I feel like, okay, would probably be fine in public schools. One I feel like would struggle.
Right.
And I never liked the idea of standardized tests and the fact that they teach to the test.
Exactly.
For a large portion of time during certain years. Things that are important for us, for them to learn, is more about being a good part of the community, learning to interact with, you know, a wide variety of people of different ages. Because I've always kind of seen it like you go sit in this room for 8 hours with a bunch of kids who are all your same age. And then you go to college and you're expected all of a sudden to manage your own schedule, to do it all for yourself. And you've never had the responsibility prior to that.
Sure.
And then you go out into the workforce and all of a sudden you're faced with managing yourself, but also interacting with people of different ages at that point and different backgrounds. And so it's just, I've just never been a fan. So for us, it's been, homeschool was always going to be what we were planning to do. It also gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot of consistency.
Yes.
So you know, and I have family members who are not on board and who don't get it, but yet they're still asking me, can you come visit in September? And I'm like, well, yeah, luckily we can, because otherwise if we were in school, that would be a big nope.
Right, right.
So, you know, it's like...
Yeah, a major benefit of homeschooling is being able to take those trips randomly.
Yes.
And still stay on your curriculum path.
Yeah, it's always been really funny to me when they appreciate the flexibility, but consistently ask me when they're going to public school.
Because they need that socialization, Julie, naturally.
Yeah, my kids are so unsocial. You've seen them.
I completely feel where you're coming from on the homeschool aspect. We, going from Virginia as a kindergarten to New York as a second grader, and then adding on to that, Brennan was now introduced to Common Core math after he had already figured out how to do math without Common Core. So he was doing multiplication and really awesome math before we got to second grade. And then he comes home on the second week of school and he's like, Mom, look how many triangles fit in a square, and that's addition. And I'm like, what? How many cubes are in a question mark? And I'm like, what the hell? Where is this math and how? And now I'm supposed to help him with it.
Right.
And I'm like, where is this in now? I can't figure out how many triangles are in a question mark. Like, What the heck? And that is frustrating.
It's so frustrating. There have been so many times where I have had to like shift gears when I'm in the middle of teaching them something.
Right.
Because they're not getting it, and I have to immediately switch gears and think, okay, how else can I teach this in a way that they understand? And math is the biggest problem for me because I already am not great in math. I mean, I barely made it through without a tutor. Like, I had to have a tutor.
Right.
Otherwise, I would never have made it through. Like, math and I are not friends. But I have to help my kids. Like I had to relearn long division this past year. I was like, John, how do you do this again? Because normally we have a calculator, right?
Sure.
And when we were growing up, our teachers were like, you'll never have a calculator in your pocket.
Right. The irony.
So it's kind of weird, but I do find myself switching, helping them now because I still have to help them. And so I do find myself having to switch and trying to figure out. And I could not imagine a teacher having to do that 30 times.
Right.
There's no time in a day for them to do that.
Yes. Yes, when Brennan was in second grade and came home with Common Core math that I did not understand, so I was like, whatever, just do it the way you know how to do it. Carry the one or whatever it was. And he turned in his homework and got it wrong because he didn't show his work on the boxes with the dots in it. And I'm like, why does he need to know boxes with dots if he's getting the right answer, carrying the one? Like, why can't we carry the one all of a sudden?
Right.
When did that become the wrong way to do math? I don't know. But this is something that we face in being military spouses, putting our kids in school to school to school, from state to state to state. And it is frustrating and it is infuriating. And there's no way for us to communicate to these teachers and these new schools, hey, we've learned how to do this different ways in different states. Why do we have to adhere to your specific way of teaching Common Core math when for the last 4 duty stations we've been in, we haven't had to have Common Core math. We just know how to add.
Yes.
That is so frustrating.
Well, and two, like you and I understand that we are very lucky that we have the privilege to be able to stay home and to homeschool our kids.
Absolutely.
To be there to do that. Not everybody has that. Not
Exactly.
everybody can do that. And so to be someone who has to depend on the school to teach their children, but they still have to advocate for them because sometimes it's so different.
Yes.
And so I can only imagine how hard that must be as a parent to be constantly having to really advocate and stay on top of your child's education to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks.
Right. And then on top of it, you've got a job.
You've got a job and you're working, or, if your spouse is deployed, then it's just you.
Right.
And so you basically are the single parent for, 2 weeks, 4 months, 6 months, however long they're gone. And it's hard. That's a big struggle. So I think a lot of times people think, oh, thank goodness they're going back to school. But when it comes to military, and yeah, if you've been there a year and you kind of have gotten into the rhythm, yeah, that can be kind of a relief. Yes, they're finally going back to school.
Exactly.
But because as coasties, we always move in the summer, right?
Right.
So we're always coming into a new school year with a lot of trepidation as far as like, oh, what's this year going to bring?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I have a funny story to tell you. Okay, so Brennan, we have just moved to New York. And remember, I had a kindergartner who is now going into second grade. My kindergartner is now getting on a bus, and I am just trusting the process. But come on now, I have just come from Virginia, and this is my first baby, right? So I'm supposed to just trust the system? No. What do you do when you go to a new state? You go to the school. You want to show your child the school. You want to say, okay, when you get off the bus, you're going to go in this door. Let's figure out where your classroom is going to be, because nobody is going to help your child. Nobody helps the military child on their first day of school. They just go in and have to assimilate like everybody else. So I go to the school the day before school begins. School's beginning on a Tuesday or something, so I'm like, we'll go on a Monday. I'm sure there'll be tons of teachers there getting the classrooms ready for the students the next morning. So we go there, I walk in the door, and a security guard stops me at the door and says, "What are you doing here?" And I say, "Hi, I'm Stephanie. Nice to meet you. This is Brennan. He's starting second grade. We've got this teacher. I just want him to know where his class is. Do you mind? We won't bother anybody. We'll be in and out in 3 seconds. I just want him to learn where he's supposed to walk, because it's intimidating being a military child going to a brand new school where everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows where they're going. They've been anticipating these teachers for years, but my kid doesn't. I just want to make sure he doesn't get lost." And she says, "What is your child's name?" I said, "This is Brennan." And she said, "Okay." Now she takes her eyes off of me And she looks at Brennan, and this is exactly what she says. Brennan, when you get off the bus, you're going to walk through these doors. You're going to turn right. Turn your head right. Do you see that building, that room right there? That room is the lunchroom. You're going to go in there. You're going to grab your breakfast. You're going to eat your breakfast. You're going to put your tray right on that wall right there. Do you see that wall right there that has that spot for lunch and food? Yes, ma'am. You're going to put your tray right there. Then you are going to find a note on the wall that says your teacher's name. What is your teacher's name? Mrs. So-and-so. You're going to find Mrs. So-and-so's name on the wall. You're going to go stand in Mrs. So-and-so's section. You see those pages, those pieces of paper on the wall right there? You're going to find the one with Mrs. So-and-so's name. Do you understand that? Yes, ma'am. You're going to then, with your teacher and the rest of your class, walk down this hall. Now turn your head to the left, honey. Do you see that wall? All that wall all the way down there with the red door and the green door? Do you see this line in the middle of the floor? You're going to walk on the right side. The right side is where you're going to walk. Which side do you walk on? The right side? You're going to walk through the green door, not the red door, honey, the green door. Which door are you going to walk through? The green door. Exactly. You're going to walk down that way. You're going to look up on the wall. Up on the wall, there's going to be numbers above each door. Which door are you looking for? 201. You're going to be looking for 201. That's exactly right. When you get to 201, you're going to turn right because that's the side that it's on. That is your teacher's classroom. Now, repeat it back to me. And I'm just like, what? And he says, I'm going to get off the bus. I'm going to turn right. I'm looking right. That's the lunchroom. I'm going to eat my lunch. I'm going to put my lunch on that tray over there. And then I'm going to go stand in my teacher's assigned section on the wall. The wall is where it has all the teachers' names. And I'm going to go stand there. And then I'm going to walk with my teacher, with my class, down this hallway. I'm going to walk on the right-hand side. And I'm going to go through the green door. And then I'm going to look up and I'm going to see 201, which is my classroom. And that's where I'm going to go. And then she looks up at me and she says, he'll be fine. We'll see him tomorrow. Goodbye. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to trust the process. Like, he gets it.
Yeah.
And part of me was relieved, but then the other part of me was like, okay, now this is a new world we're in. This isn't, come on, honey, let's show you where your classroom is. This is, no, he's going to sink or swim.
Yeah.
And he's going to figure it out real quick.
Right. And so as a military child, you learn the country is not the same everywhere.
Right.
People in this country are not the same everywhere. Where in one area you may get the, come on, honey, I'll show you where it is. I'll help you go through it and we'll do this together.
Yes.
And in other parts of the country you will get the, he'll be fine.
Yes.
Right? There is different mentalities everywhere, and that is something else that kids have to adjust to.
How stressful.
But they do it so well.
Right. Well, we tell ourselves they do it so well.
We do tell
ourselves. And we
ourselves.
have to tell ourselves that because that's what keeps us sane as we go from new place to new
Yes.
place and just trust the system with our child.
I think they're very resilient.
They are very resilient.
I feel like they kind of are very resilient and can do stuff. And like as a parent, you struggle so much with like stuff because even as a parent who homeschools, I do struggle with certain things. Like I have a child who is painfully shy and will not go up and do anything and ask for anything for himself. So that is something that we constantly are working on.
Right.
Whereas, some people may be like, well, in school he would have gotten that. No, he would not have. He would have just faded into the background.
Yeah, he would have just been crushed by the weight of it all.
Because nobody's there to say, nope, you got to do it. You got to do this. This is going to be your life.
Exactly.
You need to do it, and you've got to advocate for yourself.
And this is another good thing to bring up is bullying in school.
Yes.
It's awful these days.
Yes, my kids have even experienced it in preschool.
In preschool?
Preschool, yes.
Really?
Yeah. They still talk about the kid, too.
Oh, no.
Yes. It's however, like they were 4.
Right.
No, they were 3.
Oh my god.
They're 11 and they still talk about this kid. I would say his name, but I better not.
No, don't say his name. Bullies aren't bullies forever.
Let's hope not.
No, because you know what? And I'm going to give a quick little tangent story. I was bullied by somebody when I was in 4th grade. We were not a military family, but we did move pretty often, so I was always the new kid everywhere we went. And there was a kid who used to beat me up. He used to call me Ronald McDonald with the big red shoes. He used to hit me with binders. It was awful. I hated it. And one day, he was walking to school, and my mom pulled over the car and said, Stephanie, get out. And she said, you, get in. And he got in the car, and I think she threatened his life. But you can't do that these days. What I can tell you is he never touched me again, but I Facebook stalked him about 10 years ago, and I sent him a message and said, you may not remember me, but I am still carrying your bullying around with me all of these years later, like 30 years later. And he apologized and said, I remember you. I remember your mother. She threatened my life. And I remember thinking, I must have done a really awful thing. And I didn't even realize growing up how awful I was. But I now am a parent, and I am teaching my kids not to be the kid that I was when we were in school together. And I'm so glad you reached out. And can we please be friends? And let's share our lives. And I was like, oh my gosh, this moment could not have been better. So that was a really cathartic process, but I don't think that our kids can see 30 years down the road.
No.
It's impossible. And to be honest, the kids these days that are in school, I don't know if they would have the same circle, the same come to Jesus that my new old bully friend did.
No, and the thing that really terrifies me about bullying now is there's no end.
Right.
Like when we were growing up, we could come home and home was safe, right?
Right.
There was that bullying ended at the end of the school day.
Yeah.
There is no longer that thanks to social media.
Exactly.
And the internet. The bullying can continue, and
compound.
And it terrifies me.
Yep.
There are things that happen to kids through the internet that just are terrifying.
Horrifying.
And, I grew up, both of my parents were in law enforcement. My mother, both of my parents really knew, the seedy side, the bad side of the life, the horrible things that could happen.
Sure.
But my mother, with her job, really knew the horrible things that could happen with kids and with, other, really could happen with bad people.
Absolutely.
So, they really did kind of protect me, sheltered me a little bit. I wasn't naive sheltered, because they very much were you could die if you go there.
Right.
You cannot go to that place because there are gangs. You cannot go to this place because you will die. They really did kind of instill a fear in me of that stuff, which I still carry.
Mm-hmm.
But they did protect me. A real quick story, when the Olympics were in Atlanta, I got a job. And I was supposed to be somebody doing something at the Olympic Village, right? Mm-hmm. And both of my parents were like, no, you're not going to go work there. Oh. I'm like, but I got this job. It's the Olympics. And they're like, no, because we know what part of town that Olympic Village is next to, and there's no way you're going to go to work every day and be anywhere near that side of town. We know what could happen. Right. So no, you're not taking that job. So I did not take that job, and I did not get to work for the Olympics.
Oh, man.
Even though they both did. But that's how I grew up, with that mentality of that. So I try not to really, I tell my kids, be aware, right? We know stranger danger, right? But it's on a whole different level.
Completely different now.
And now, even now I'm very aware of the realities. And I think sometimes there are parents who aren't.
Right.
And it's terrifying. When I see a parent who's got their kid's name, their band, their school, everything on their car, I'm like, well, that's just an invitation to a pedophile.
Right. Everybody now, every single stranger is suspect.
Yeah, I feel like you really have to protect your child on social media.
Right.
You, as a parent, it's kind of your responsibility to, I'm very guarded as to how much I really share with them on social media. Mm-hmm. I learned very early on not to, share a lot. And, because I didn't want people to be like, oh, hey, such and such.
Right.
I'm friends with your mom, and she said it was okay if you go with me. No.
Exactly. Everything is so scary now.
It's terrifying. And in going back, and shooter drills, we didn't have.
Oh my gosh.
We never had that, right?
Nope. So I had earthquake drills because we were in Southern California.
Right. Fire drills. I think we had tornado drills once in a while.
Yep.
Being in Georgia. But shooter drills, that's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Not imagine what, kids are, I almost feel like they should be tougher, but are they?
Right. I remember the day that, and this still gives me goosebumps, the day Finn was in preschool. He was 4 years old, and he came home and he said, Mom, guess what I learned in school today? And I said, what, baby? And he said, I learned the difference between being quiet and being silent. And I said, "Oh, okay. Were you guys being loud in class?" And he said, "No, it was for an active shooter drill. Now, if we're quiet in class, that means that we can whisper. But when that buzzer goes off and we have to be silent, it's so that we can hide." What? I still get goosebumps every single time when your 4-year-old tells you why they have to learn how to be silent.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And this is just another reason to homeschool. Keep them
Yes.
safe, but then you're keeping them sheltered, but are you too sheltered? Having them now in extracurricular activities like traveling sports teams or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever, just so that they can get that socialization, but you're still keeping them home and safe because the world is crazy now, especially for a target new kid who moves from state to state and is always the new kid.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's got to be stressful for parents who have to like send their kids. I really do sympathize,
Right.
and I guess empathize like how hard that is. Like I don't envy them, and I really do wish them like I wish for their children to have an absolute amazing school situation.
Right.
And
That they
for
meet their lifelong friends, that
yeah,
that they have those friends until they're married and longer, and they met when they were 7 and they still keep in touch.
right.
It's just not a story that you hear often as a military family.
No, and I think it's why we all kind of stick together.
Right.
I know, like in military family situations, there are times where you get to a new duty station and your neighbor or like someone you just met will be your emergency contact to pick your kid up from school.
Right. Right.
Because it's someone that we have a level of comfort with. They know the drill, right?
Exactly.
So,
Right. If they're grabbing their kid, they can grab yours.
yeah,
And you live right next door and you all have the same understanding of life and emergencies.
yeah,
Because we all have these random emergencies that are a little different from civilian people and their emergencies.
yes,
You have emergencies because someone gets sick, but then you have emergencies because, dad's boat didn't come home on the day it was supposed to.
and
Or,
I've got to work late and I can't go pick up my kid because I'm being held up at work and dad's not coming in when they're supposed to.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. We are, you and I, very lucky that we found this private school. And this is not a plug for Laurel Springs School. This is not what this is. It's
Right.
just we happen to find an amazing private online school, which is pricey, but it keeps the curriculum
Consistent.
consistent.
And it's a curriculum that I'm not having to find. I'm not having to hope works. There's a teacher on the other side of that computer who I know will help my children understand concepts that maybe I can't help.
Exactly.
There is a consistency there,
And it's all college accredited work.
and they get a diploma at the end.
Yep.
After grade 12, they get a diploma that then they can show to a college if they choose to go. That's a whole nother tangent. If they choose to go,
Right.
they have a high school diploma.
Now, this school is the same school that a lot of celebrities and pro athletes put their kids in because they are traveling all over the world and they need flexibility with the kids' school. And that is something that I think as a military family we can appreciate because we are constantly moving or doing things or having to take random days off because our active duty member has random days off.
Right. Well, and two, like, as far as the Coast Guard, we don't have a lot of overseas billets, right? We have like Guam. That might be the furthest that you go, right?
Right.
That's not part of the United States.
Right.
But when you go to a foreign country, you can still go to Laurel Springs. You are
Exactly.
still enrolled in Laurel Springs. So you can still do all the things. You could be in Germany, but
Right.
still staying within the same school system that you were in and still
Exactly.
being that consistency, which I absolutely love.
Yes.
I love that part about it.
Yes, I love that we can take vacations that aren't at the same time that schools take vacations so that we are not in a huge mass of people taking a school vacation at the exact same time. Like our winter break can be whenever we decide winter break is.
Yeah.
Our summer break or spring break can be whenever we decide that is. And we're not fighting for rides or lines at amusement parks
Yeah.
with every other kid on spring break.
And summer breaks are things that parents struggle with every year because not only do you have to find care if you work, and that can be difficult, but you also may go from a place where they start later, so they end later, but they start earlier because, like in Georgia, they're already back to school.
Exactly.
But here, they don't start till next month. So it's, you could have a 2-month summer
Right.
or almost a 4-month summer.
Yeah, you pick your start date.
Yeah, and with Laurel Springs, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But like if you're moving from here and you go down to, you would be late
Exactly.
if you don't move until August.
Yes.
So that also affects when you move. And I know in other, like, we're lucky that we do move in the summer. We do tend to keep our moves in the summer. It's very rare for us to move off season, right? It's always PCS season for us.
Exactly.
But other branches, that does not happen. They can move mid-school year.
Exactly.
And bless them for that. And their kids, bless them for that, because
they have to be a whole level of flexible that we don't even understand.
Yes, those kids have to be the most well-rounded and flexible kids.
Yep.
Because I could not imagine like 3 or 4 times in 2 or 3 years change. Like it could be 2 different schools in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So schools are,
I'm with you. There's
nothing. I mean, it's just, I am grateful that I am able to put my kids in the school that I am and homeschool them and keep them home and consistent and teach them the things that I feel like are important.
Exactly.
So outside of the school curriculum.
And that makes us want to ask everybody listening, what are your struggles about moving and kids going to school? If you've got kids, you have 10,000 concerns, I'm sure. What are those? What would you like to hear us talk about? And how do your kids adjust when they go from school to school? And how do you adjust if you choose to homeschool? We're curious. We want to know.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for taking a moment with us, the Mommandants. You can find us on our website at mommandantsmoments.com.
We also have social media, so you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, all with Mommandants Moments.